The 2025 6 Hours of the Glen was absolutely wild and showcased everything that I love about IMSA and sports car racing. We had massive battle packs, treacherous changeable conditions, torrential rain, fuel saving, strategy, and of course, the championship leaders going door to door and through the grass. So, as the full slate of IMSA teams heads to upstate New York and prepares to take the track for qualifying, let's remind ourselves of the championship standings. After Detroit, the number 77 AO Racing REXY Porsche leads just ahead of that yellow 3 Corvette, with the number 64 Mustang in third and the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari in a close fourth. With the cars out on track for qualifying, it's not the championship contenders that shine, because despite the best efforts from Dan Harper, who pushes his 48 BMW to its limit, Andrea Caldarelli claims pole position in his number 9 Pfaff Lamborghini. And if we look at the results, we have to go all the way down to 6th position to find the first championship contender, with that 3 Corvette of Alexander Sims just ahead of the 64 Mustang of Mike Rockenfeller, with the 77 AO Racing REXY Porsche of Klaus Bachler back in 9th. With race day upon us and 6 hours of madness ahead, the drivers will forget about qualifying and focus on the task at hand. Because regardless of where you qualified, we know that everything can be turned on its head in an instant in these IMSA races. So as Bachler does his final checks and tests his water bottle, and Sims gives his final fist bump, these incredible drivers head out on track to commence the battle. As Bachler makes his way to the green flag, the race has already thrown a curveball before it's even started, as we can see precipitation on his onboard camera. The track is damp, and all of these drivers are on dry tires. So this first trip around this Watkins Glen circuit is going to be especially treacherous as they line up 2 by 2 and make their way through the final corner. But these are the best drivers in the world, and they will push absolutely flat out regardless of the conditions. And as the race goes green, they hurtle into the first corner and take a step into the unknown. Rockenfeller is trying to find a way past the Lexus out front as he goes side by side with the BMW, and we can see the 65 Mustang of Chris Meeks makes his way around the outside of Bachler through turn 1 as the field now hammers to the tricky uphill S's. Look around the outside, and there is a 36 GTD leading DXDT Corvette going by Bachler as well. Up ahead though, Alexander Sims tucks in behind Nicky Katzberg in the number 4 Corvette as he makes his way past that 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari of Albert Costa. But if we look around the outside, we can see the number 1 BMW has made his way past, dropping this Corvette back to 5th position, just behind Bachler, closes in and then passes that 64 Mustang of Mike Rockenfeller, who is having trouble on this opening lap. We can see Bachler pulling away as Rockenfeller falls behind in these incredibly tricky and rainy conditions through the long right-hander, and we can see that 36 Corvette makes its way around the outside of the Mustang as well. Those big American V8 Mustangs struggling in these changeable conditions. And Bachler tiptoes his way up alongside that 65 Mustang, the traction control helping on that Mustang big time on the exit as it wiggles around, just trying to find grip. Bachler sends it up the inside of that DXDT Corvette as he closes in on the 65 Mustang of Meese, who is barely able to wrangle that Mustang as it slides on the exit, struggling to put the power down. Bachler now side by side with that blue and green Corvette. But just behind, we can see Rockenfeller closing in as they make their way into the tight right-hander. Bachler still side by side with that green Corvette, and as he makes his way past that Corvette, he gets a little slide on the exit, loses grip, and the Mustang of Rockenfeller passes the 77 car, but Bachler fights back around the outside with this tricky left-hander. The road falls away on the exit, and you lose so much grip as you struggle to put the power down. Bachler now back ahead of the 64 car with this Rocky versus Rexy battle raging on the first lap. Through that fast sweeping left-hander, Bachler was able to build a slight gap on the Mustang, and they make their way back onto the front straight to finish this chaotic first lap. But the chaos is obviously not done yet as Rocky once again fights back on the 77 Porsche. He looks around the outside into turn 1, but Bachler breaks late into the corner and carries huge speed through the apex, but slides wide on the exit, and Rockenfeller once again has an incredible run coming out of the corner. He looks around the outside through the uphill S's. Bachler tries to defend, but that Mustang's grunt pushes the 64 car ahead of the 77, and Rocky is once again in 9th, with Bachler back in 10th position in this GTD Pro category. The Mustang stretches its legs down this long straight, but Bachler once again closes in the braking zone. Even in these tricky conditions, it's so impressive how much curb they're taking through the chicane. And through the long right-hander, we see the Mustang is tucked up behind that DXDT Corvette as Bachler is close enough to touch the rear of that 64 Mustang. And Bachler sends a late move up the inside with those better brakes, able to make his way past the 64 Mustang, up into 9th position one more time, but once again Rockenfeller has a better run. Bachler defends to the inside as he is tucked up behind that Corvette, but sends a late move up the inside of the 36 car to try to make his way past the GTD leader. They are side by side through the exit as once again Rockenfeller has the better run and tries to find his way past. They nearly go 3 wide, but he thinks better of it as the gap closes. That 36 Corvette now once again ahead of Bachler, who once again tries to make his way up the inside of that 36 car. This is absolutely breathless racing, and we still have 5 hours and 56 minutes remaining as Rockenfeller looks around the outside. Bachler once again carries huge speed to the apex, but runs wide on the exit, and Rockenfeller has the run, darts to the left-hand side, and makes his way around that 77 Porsche. And with Bachler unable to fight back around the outside, he has to settle in behind this 64 Mustang, at least for now. Let's jump aboard the number 3 Corvette with Alexander Sims, who is tucked up behind this number 14 Lexus. And if we look to the right-hand side, we can see there is the 65 Mustang of Chris Meese trying to make his way past as Sims sends it around the outside of that Mustang and looks around the outside of the Lexus as well. He gets a good run coming out the corner and tucks into the side draft of that number 14 car. Through this right-hander, he goes around the outside, which becomes the inside as they go side by side through that left-hander. I cannot emphasize enough how challenging that is to do. Incredible driving from both Tielitz and Sims as the 3 Corvette powers around the outside and up into 5th position, with Tielitz falling back to 6th. We can jump back aboard the number 77 Corvette, which is still in 10th place and still looking at the back of that 36 DXDT Corvette. Through this downhill right-hander, Bachler gets a little wiggle as Rockenfeller closes in on the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari and is caught behind that Evel Knievel liveried car. Around the outside goes the 36 Corvette as Rockenfeller struggles for grip through the apex. The Corvette makes its way around the outside and Bachler closes in on that 64 car as well. Into the toe of the boot, Rockenfeller looks around the outside of the Corvette as Bachler takes the inside line and squeezes past the 64 car. Once again, Rockenfeller has a great run out of the corner, but Bachler takes the defensive line as they head into the heel of the boot. The V8-powered Mustang blasts past this flat 6 Porsche as Bachler brakes as late as he possibly can into this tight right-hander, making his way past that 64 car once again. Rockenfeller uses every inch of road on the exit as Bachler is now up into 9th position. But we will once again jump ahead on board this number 3 Corvette, which is up in 5th position. And we can see that Sims is actually caught behind an LMP2 car. That's because in these tricky, changeable conditions, those LMP2s which don't have ABS are actually really treacherous to drive. So, as he makes his way down the hill into this left-hander, he is overtaken by the Lexus as he is caught behind that LMP2, and we can see the 65 Mustang of Meese goes past as well, but he is still caught behind that LMP2 as they head to the toe of the boot. He pokes his nose up the inside, but is not able to make his way past, as we can see the Ferrari trying to make it past around the outside of that Corvette as well. The Ferrari and Corvette go side by side, still stuck behind that LMP2 car. And down into the braking zone, we can see how much he closes in on the LMP2, with the Ferrari going around the outside of both of them, and Sims struggling on the exit as he gets hit by an LMP2 car. Bachler makes his way past the DXDT Corvette and closes in on the number 3 as well as he looks around the outside of that 52 LMP2 car through this off-camber left-hander. Sims still caught behind that LMP2 with Rexy now breathing down his neck. The championship contenders now nose to tail in the 6 Hours of the Glen. Now, fortunately, that LMP2 car has begun to speed up, so Sims can try to build a gap to that 77 Porsche. And as they hammer into the bus stop, we can see the 52 LMP2 make its way past the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari, which is compromised on the entry. Sims closes in on that 81 car. It seems like, for the time being, the rain has stopped, and these drivers can now really push their cars in these drying conditions. Sims looks around the outside of that Dragon Speed Ferrari, but there's nowhere to go there. He looks around the outside once again, as we can actually see a little damage on the nose of that 81 car. but just behind, Backler is still breathing down their throat as they make their way through that fast left-hander into the toe of the boot. 3 of the 4 championship leaders now nose to tail. And on the exit, Sims has a run on that 81 Ferrari. Costa moves to the right-hand side to defend as they make their way into this tight right-hander. Sims tucks into his draft, then pulls around the outside and brakes as late as he possibly can as he makes his way past that 81 car. But as this stint continues, the weather throws another curveball, and these drying conditions turn into an absolute downpour. With the safety car now out on track, this is the perfect time for the entire field to come in for more fuel and to change onto rain tires. So, as Backler makes his way into pit lane, the 9 Pfaff Lamborghini leads the number 48 BMW and 4 Corvette. Backler delicately makes his way into his pit box. It can be so treacherous in these pit lanes when you're on cold, slick tires and you have wet conditions like this. So you have to be extra careful not to overshoot your pit box, as Heinrich now jumps aboard this number 77 car. We can see the number 48 BMW has jumped ahead of the Pfaff Lamborghini as Rexy's door is slammed shut and dropped onto its jacks, with Heinrich pulling away just alongside number 14 Lexus. There's a little traffic jam on the pit exit, but with that 14 car in the fast lane, the Lexus pulls out in front of this number 77 REXY Porsche, with Heinrich now back in 8th position in the GTD PRO category. The number 3 Corvette of Alexander Sims able to stay just ahead of that 77 car as he will restart in 7th position. With the field lined up and ready to go back racing, it pains me to say it, but I do not have good footage of this restart. So as Heinrich is now hammering around the track in these wet conditions, he will have an incredible restart as he has already made his way past a BMW, it looks, through that left-hander and through the right-hander that makes it onto the front straight. But all we can see is him navigating this treacherous track as he gets a kick of oversteer through the apex, struggling to put the power down. We can see the Lexus is just in front. If we jump aboard the 3, we can't see much, but we do see a flash of green ahead amongst the spray as the 77 Porsche has already made its way past the number 3 Corvette as they hammer into turn 1. We can see an LMP2 just ahead as Heinrich navigates this treacherous corner. We can see an LMP2 car, a Corvette on his outside, and there is a Lamborghini as well as he makes his way past that 14 Lexus, going 3 wide with a Lamborghini as he makes his way past up into 3rd position. We can see Lamborghini and BMW are now side by side through the uphill S's as Rexy begins to pull away out front, going past an LMP2 car and tucking it behind the class-leading Corvette and number 48 BMW. They go 3 wide with an LMP2 as Rexy powers his way past Heinrich up into P2, now tucked in behind that 4 Corvette, having gone from P8 to P2 in half a lap in these rainy conditions as we finally once again get onboard footage aboard this number 77 Porsche with Nicky Katzberg in that 4 Corvette tucked up behind an LMP2 car. He pokes his nose up the inside and makes his way past through this left-hander as Heinrich tucks in behind the 4 Corvette as well with that class lead now within touch. What an incredible, incredible piece of driving from everyone in this field, but especially the number 77 Porsche of Lauren Heinrich, who now looks up the inside of that 4 Corvette, both of them taking wildly different lines through the toe of the boot, with Katzberg taking that wide line to get a better exit coming out of the corner. And as they hammer into this tight right-hander, we can look around the outside, and there is the 48 BMW fighting back around the outside as Heinrich slides through that right-hander. The BMW making its way past up into 2nd position, but Heinrich pokes his nose up the inside with the BMW running wide. Heinrich makes his way past once again back into 2nd position. But if we jump back aboard the number 64 Mustang, we can look ahead and see a spun LMP2. The number 11 LMP2 is unsighted by that Mustang and makes head-to-head contact. A nightmare scenario. But fortunately, both drivers walked away from this incident. I just have to say how fortunate we are to have such high levels of safety in modern racing. Let's jump back aboard the 77 Porsche of Lauren Heinrich, who looks cool as a cucumber as he makes his way into his pit box to hand back over to Klaus Backler after an hour of driving. And with the weather conditions having dried out once again, as Backler buckles in to the 77 Porsche, the team is bolting on a set of dry tires. And with a stop complete, Backler launches out of his pit box with a humongous burnout and rejoins the race in 1st position, with their main championship rival, the number 3 Corvette, back in 5th position for this restart. As Backler leads the field back to green, we unfortunately once again have an issue seeing exactly what happens with these onboard cameras. But as he makes his way through the penultimate corner, we can see him looking in his right-hand mirror. And if we jump back aboard the 64 Mustang, we can see the 14 Lexus trying to make its way past off the track as they make contact. The Porsche's run to this right-hander is compromised, and so is the 14's as Vervish in the 65 blasts past the 77 Porsche, with Backler defending to the right-hand side, but that 65 Mustang is already through and into the lead of the race as PRO hustles into turn 1. But if we look around the outside, there is the 3 Corvette of Antonio Garcia, who makes his way around the outside of this 64 car, with Backler trying to tuck into the draft of the Mustang, but the Lexus fights back around the outside through the uphill S's, and they go 2 by 2. You could cover these 4 cars with a blanket. It is so tight in this GTD Pro category. And if we look from the off-board camera, we can see there's actually 6 of them all piling into the tight chicane. The Mustang backs off as the 14 Lexus blasts past the 77 Porsche, which is now down to 3rd position after restarting in the lead, as Garcia also closes in on Backler. And with Backler setting into that 3rd position, the safety car was once again scrambled. But even during the safety car periods, strategy is playing out, and I want you to listen, because as he heads into turn 1, we hear nothing because he is coasting. He has dumped the clutch, has the car in neutral, and is saving as much fuel as he can during the safety car period, because those pit stops, as we know, are all important for gaining or losing positions in this GTD Pro field. So, as this GTD Pro field makes its way through the penultimate corner and prepares for this pit stop sequence, Backler actually plays another game as he leaves a huge gap to this 14 Lexus, which you're probably wondering why you would do that. Wouldn't you want to be as close as possible? He then closes that gap, pushing as hard as he can as he slams on the brakes, trying to actually build a gap behind this number 3 Corvette. And he does just that, building a car length or 2 gap to that 3 car. And it seems small, it may seem insignificant, but those are the margins that can matter for gaining or losing positions during these pit stops. So as Backler makes his way into his pit box, he hits the hot dog, which is pulled up and the fuel goes in. With the fueling complete, Backler is released from his pit box and rejoins the race in 1st position. AO Racing putting on a masterclass of how to take advantage of small, imperceptible marginal gains to retake the class lead. And with the field ready for yet another restart, this 3 Corvette is once again tucked up behind that 77 Porsche, with the 2 championship leaders now in the lead of the race as Backler accelerates away, trying to build a gap on this 3 Corvette of Antonio Garcia. Backler clearly learned from the previous restart and has built a nice gap to this 3 Corvette and is not under fire like he was last time. And as his flat 6 sings down the front straight, we can see LMP2s weaving out front as they try to build temperature in their tires, but this 3 Corvette of Garcia just slightly closing in on the 77 Porsche, which runs slightly wide through turn 1, with Backler trying to carry as much speed as humanly possible into the uphill S's. Garcia just closing in ever so slightly on the 77 Porsche, and as they come over the crest, he tucks in underneath that massive rear wing of the 77 Porsche. Down this back straight, that dinosaur just has enough legs to stay ahead of this 3 Corvette into the chicane. Backler taking a huge amount of curb on either side of the chicane as he stays ahead of the 3 car. Now, with us over 20 minutes into this video, and you hopefully glued to your screen, I want to temporarily break the 3rd wall and just say how incredible I think this racing is. I have been following IMSA and ALMS before that for nearly my entire life, and I know we will look back at this 2025 season and just think about how incredible it was to have Rexy versus Corvette versus Ford versus Lexus versus Dragon Speed versus BMW in the GTD Pro category. This is truly a golden era of GTD racing, and I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am as Garcia looks around the outside of the 77 Porsche of Backler. He tries for the over-under as he squeezes up alongside Rexy's arm on his door. The Corvette with a nose ahead into this tight left-hander as they rejoin the NASCAR circuit, but Rexy has the better line through the corner and shoves the Corvette slightly wide as Backler retakes the lead aboard his 77 Porsche through this fast left-hander. And unlike the previous restart, as he makes his way through the final corner on this circuit, Backler is still in 1st position, having led at the restart. But as they hammer into turn 1, we'll jump ahead a few laps because Bachler has a bit of an issue. The car doesn't downshift, and through the exit we can see how slow that Porsche is because it's stuck in that higher gear, just doesn't quite have the acceleration off the corner, and the 3 Corvette is now tucked up behind the 77 Porsche. Fortunately for Bachler, Antonio Garcia caught that Porsche at the wrong time and had to lift out of it coming through the uphill S's. Now Bachler is able to build a slight gap as they make their way into the chicane. But once again, I want you to listen. That Porsche is unable to downshift, and Garcia closes in with Bachler absolutely unable to fight back on the number 3 Corvette, which easily breezes past around the outside, an unconventional and challenging pass. But this Porsche is wounded as Bachler is caught in a higher gear, and the car is unable to accelerate coming out of the corners. We can just hear that Porsche bogging down as the 65 Mustang makes its way past, as Bachler is finally able to downshift into a proper gear as he makes his way through the toe of the boot and accelerates behind that Mustang. It seems like the issue might have been resolved, but Bachler lost 2 positions and critically gave the lead away to their championship rivals. Now, if you think back to Petit Le Mans, the team had a similar issue where the car wouldn't upshift going through right-handers. So hopefully they learned from that instance and are able to quickly diagnose and fix this issue. Fortunately, another safety car comes out, which will hopefully allow this AO Racing crew to address the downshifting issue aboard this REXY Porsche. So, as Bachler pulls into his pit box and jumps out of the car and Heinrich hops aboard, the team hands him another steering wheel, hoping that that will solve the downshifting issues aboard this dinosaur. Heinrich quickly mounts the wheel and fires out of his pit box, but with the 77 crew losing critical time in that pit stop, they fall back to 8th position in this ultra-competitive category. The bad news for Heinrich is obviously that he is back in 8th position while their championship rivals in this 3 Corvette are up in 2nd, right behind the leading number 48 BMW. But the good news is that with an hour and 40 minutes left on the clock and the field bunched up behind the safety car, there will be plenty of opportunities for this REXY Porsche to claw its way back up through the field. And as the race goes green, Heinrich is already all over the rear of this 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari into the fast left-hander. The Ferrari just inches away on the exit as Heinrich takes a wide entry into this right-hander, closing in on that 81 car. Costa not carrying quite as much speed through the exit, and Heinrich has a run coming out of the corner. He looks up the inside into turn 1 as he brakes as late as possible on the inside of that Ferrari, but Costa fights back around the outside. Heinrich squeezes him to the edge of the road, but Costa is not giving up and fights back once again through the uphill S's. They go side by side through the right-hander, side by side through the left-hander as well, as Heinrich hangs it around the outside and up into 7th position. But if we jump aboard the 64 Mustang and look just up ahead, the 65 car goes 2 wheels in the dirt and hits a sign as he tries to squeeze by that number 4 Corvette. The Mustang runs wide over the curb as bodywork goes flying. His run through that right-hander is compromised as the 64 of Prio squeezes past Mies, and so does the 4 Corvette of Tommy Milner, with Heinrich now all over the rear of that number 4 car. Through turn 1, and Heinrich is desperate to catch this 4 Corvette as he uses every inch of road on the exit, getting a little wiggle as he pushes this Porsche to and over its limit in the quest for that P5. As he hammers through the uphill S's, we can see that massive speed differential as the GTP comes flying past these 2 GTD PRO cars. The Porsche and Corvette actually look really evenly matched in terms of top speed, but into the chicane, Milner takes almost no curb, and Heinrich absolutely abuses them and closes in dramatically on that number 4 car. Through the downhill right-hander, Milner runs slightly wide as Heinrich hugs the apex in this 77 Porsche. He tries to get the overlap on the exit, but it will be challenging, if not impossible, to overtake through this downhill left-hander. Heinrich holds a wide line as that 4 Corvette drifts wide as well and gets a little slide on the exit, with Heinrich looking around the outside into the toe of the boot. Heinrich brakes incredibly late as they go side by side through the apex. Heinrich puts the power down and is able to complete the move around the outside of the 4 Corvette. What an impressive, aggressive pass aboard this number 77 car. But the stop-start nature of this race continues, and with an hour and 10 minutes left, the safety car is once again out on track. So, with this GTD Pro field nose to tail, they once again make their way into pit lane for likely their final and most critical pit stop of the race. Heinrich powers out of the final corner and tucks in behind that pony car as he makes his way into pit lane in 5th position. Meanwhile, just ahead, that 3 Corvette is still tucked up behind the number 48 class-leading Paul Miller BMW. And as Garcia pulls into his pit box, we can see Sims jump over the wall and take over the reins of this number 3 Corvette, while Heinrich is all eyes on the prize aboard 77 REXY as he stays aboard, and the crew hustles as hard as they can to try to gain as many positions as possible in this crucial pit stop. Heinrich launches out of his box, and there is the 48 BMW with Heinrich just behind. He has gained 3 spots in that pit sequence that was not only critically important for this race, but also for the championship, for Heinrich to get out ahead of that Corvette and just behind this 48 BMW. So, with the race ready to go back to green, Heinrich is tucked up behind this 48 BMW and ready to fight tooth and nail with this 3 Corvette for that 2nd position. The race hasn't even gone green, and Sims is already hounding the rear of this 77 Porsche. Finally, they launch and looks around the outside, but there is nowhere to go for this fast left-hander as he has to back out of the move through the apex, but that compromises his run out of the corner as the 1 BMW squeezes around the outside into the fast right-hander. Sims is now down to 4th position after fighting for 2nd with that REXY Porsche. Just behind, the 64 Mustang is also on the hunt, and Prio looks around the outside with Sims defending to the inside. Prio brakes as late as he can, but the Corvette brakes later through this right-hander and just edges away as Sims uses every inch of road on the exit to try to build a gap on Seb Prio. But these Mustangs are so fast in a straight line, and Prio closes in through the S's. You have to love it. 2 American icons, nose to tail, down the backstretch of one of America's most iconic circuits. Prio looks up the inside, but thinks better of trying a move as Heinrich stays in 2nd position aboard his number 77 REXY Porsche. With the stint continuing, he is under fire from the number 1 BMW of Connor DeFilippi, and if you look around the outside, there goes that number 1 car as they actually made contact, just bumping wheels into the chicane with DeFilippi powering past the 77 Porsche. But this is the last we will see of that number 1 BMW because they will need to serve a penalty for having their tire pressures outside of the specified window. So, as he makes his way through that fast left-hander, Heinrich is up to 2nd position. But with 30 minutes left in the race, there is another curveball coming, and I want you to listen. Heinrich was saving a huge amount of fuel at the end of that straight, and this number 3 Corvette of Alexander Sims has now caught the rear of that 77 Porsche. The race is on for P2. Now, that AO crew had that incredibly fast pit stop to leapfrog into 2nd place. But I wonder, did they actually underfuel the car, expecting to get a bit of yellow in this final hour of the race? And now that no yellow has come, are they low on fuel compared to their competitors? I'm honestly not sure, but that's my best guess as to what happened. They took a gamble, expecting some yellow, and now that it hasn't come, they are on the back foot, and they are not out of the woods yet as this 3 Corvette is closing in on this REXY Porsche. Through the final right-hander, and we can see REXY is still fast, still has speed through the corners, but it's the end of the straight where they struggle as they try to save fuel. Heinrich coasts into the braking zone as the Corvette just behind darts to the inside and makes its way alongside through the apex as that 3 car squeezes past but slides wide through the exit. Heinrich has a better run coming out of the corner as they go side by side through the uphill S's. Heinrich has a nose ahead through the right-hander, but Sims uses a side draft to claw his way back alongside and then past that 77 REXY Porsche, but Heinrich is having absolutely none of it as he fights back as well. They go side by side, championship rivals. The only question is who will yield. Neither is the answer as they both send it into the chicane with Sims going off the track as he makes his way past that REXY Porsche and up into P2. A pass on the grass between the Corvette and REXY Porsche as an LMP2 squeezes past on the exit of that fast right-hander. REXY now in P3, but not out of the woods yet because Heinrich still needs to save a huge amount of fuel to make it to the end of the race. So as Heinrich powers out of the S's one more time, we can jump back aboard the number 64 Mustang and see the 65 car is tucked up underneath the rear wing of that 77 Porsche. into the bus stop, and Heinrich has already lifted out, saving huge fuel as the 65 squeezes around the outside, which becomes the inside to the left-hander and squeezes past that Porsche, which goes 2 wheels in the grass as the 64 makes its way past as well. Prio and Heinrich side by side through the exit, but Heinrich is not giving up. This Porsche is still strong through the corners, but just struggles at the end of the straights as he squeezes past Prio into the downhill left-hander up ahead of that 64 Mustang. That Porsche might be running out of fuel, but it is not running out of fight as Heinrich battles tooth and nail for every position, with the 81 Ferrari going around the outside as Costa tries to make his way past both the Mustang and the Porsche. He squeezes past the 64 car and tucks up behind Heinrich. Prio trying to find his way past as well, nearly makes it 3 wide as he makes contact with both the Ferrari and the Porsche, which goes side by side into this tight right-hander, with that 4 Corvette squeezing around the outside and shuffling that number 64 car back to 7th position, with the 77 Porsche now back to 5th behind this Dragon Speed Ferrari as the 64 car looks around the outside of that number 4 Corvette. It is out of the frying pan and into the fryer for this number 77 AO Rexy Porsche, but Heinrich is not giving up and will continue to fight for every position. Through that fast right-hander, Costa begins to pull away in his 81 Ferrari as Katzberg has his sights set on Rexy's rear. It is once again a big fuel save into turn 1 for Rexy as Heinrich carries as much speed as possible, but it's too much as he slides wide on the exit. His run is compromised and he is under attack from that number 4 Corvette, which squeezes up alongside and then past through the uphill S's. Heinrich tries to fight back as he gets alongside the Corvette through the exit. They go side by side once again with the 64 Mustang of Prio closing in that double draft. He tucks up behind that 4 Corvette as he tries to make his way past, but as we know, Heinrich is fighting with one hand tied behind his back as he has to lift out of the throttle to save fuel and allows the 4 and 64 to sail past into the chicane. With Heinrich back in 7th position and the 77 Porsche seemingly down and out, this race has one more curveball to throw at us. And with less than 10 minutes remaining, the safety car is once again out on track. And that means the 77 Porsche can once again run at full speed when the race goes back to green. And fortunately, this race does have one chapter left, because with just under 4 minutes remaining, we will go back to green flag racing with this number 3 Corvette tucked up behind the 48 BMW, and with that 77 Rexy Porsche back in 7th position. The GTD Pro field nearly self-destructs heading through that tight left-hander as they make their way back to green. But finally, the green flag flies and they accelerate away. The 64 Mustang of Prio gets a great launch, but has to hit the brakes to avoid overtaking that Corvette too soon. And Heinrich has a run, but nearly makes contact with the rear of the Mustang as around the outside goes Hawksworth and the GTD leading Lexus. That car might be in GTD as he gets a huge slide on the exit, but Hawksworth is a known quantity in the GTD Pro field and will do everything he can to stay ahead of Lauren Heinrich. Into turn 1, Heinrich looks around the outside of that number 12 car, but Hawksworth fights back, carrying as much speed as he can through the exit and shoving Heinrich wide onto the runoff. They go side by side through the uphill S's as that Lexus pulls away of this 77 Porsche. Just ahead, Prio has a run on the number 4 Corvette of Nicky Katzberg, as we can see the 65 and the 81 going side by side, and so do the 64 and the 4. Mies hangs on around the outside of that 81 as Prio clobbers the apex curb and gets a huge kick of oversteer through the apex. His run is compromised, and Hawksworth is now all over that 64 Mustang as Heinrich tries to find a way past as well. The Lexus twitches through the exit as Hawksworth pushes that 12 car to its limit. The Lexus has the leverage into this fast left-hander, and Heinrich tries to squeeze through as well as he makes his way alongside and then past the 64 car. Prio is not giving up though and fights back, looking up the inside, then around the outside of that 77 Porsche. Heinrich hugs the inside line as Prio tries to set up for a better launch coming out of the corner. Heinrich is tucked into the draft of that 12 Lexus that kicks up dust on the exit. Heinrich defends to the inside as the GTP comes flying past as he tries desperately to stay ahead of the 64 Mustang of Prio, who once again looks around the outside of that 77 Porsche. But Heinrich leaves absolutely no room on that inside line as Prio, I think, pushes that Porsche into this left-hander. But Heinrich is able to stay ahead of this 64 car. But with 0 minutes remaining on the clock, this number 3 Corvette is still in second position, and we can see that 48 Paul Miller BMW weaving side to side as they celebrate their first place finish at the 6 Hours of the Glen. That is crucial points for this number 3 Corvette in the championship as the 77 Porsche hammers across the line in 6th position. 6th place is obviously not what this AO crew is hoping for, but considering all the drama with the rain and then the steering wheel and then the fuel saving, 6th place actually doesn't seem that bad. But before I update you on the championship standings, I want to remind you that there was actually one more recent race at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, where the 81 Dragon Speed Ferrari actually finished in 1st place, with the 77 Porsche in 3rd and the 4 Corvette in 4th. So, although AO Racing lost the championship lead to that number 3 Corvette, they clawed a few points back at Mosport, with now that 81 Ferrari just behind both of them in 3rd place. So, with just 4 rounds remaining, I can almost guarantee you that we will have an epic finish to this championship, and I will continue to try to do the best job I can to bring all this incredible GTD Pro action to your screen. So, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and so much for supporting. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys, and I want to give a special shout out to my channel members. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all the support, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.